Welcome everyone to this philosophical journey. Now, wherever you are in your reading of philosophy, you should always heed the following. We are forever beginners when it comes to philosophy, because to philosophize means to begin thinking anew each time that we attempt to think. Now, with this, I'd like to invite you to set yourself on this path of allowing yourself to be a beginner, however much you may have read or not have read. But when you start reading, there are a few practices that will be helpful. The first is that you should really get the physical copy of the book that you're reading, for example, Plato, or Kant, or Hegel. And if you do read the original language in which the text has been written, it's a good idea to get, for example, Kant in German, Descartes in French or Latin, depending on the text, Plato in the original Greek on the left, and in translation in your mother tongue on the right, and start building your own library. It's not about having read all the books that you buy for your library, but by building a library, you contribute to the good maintenance and order of the memory of the world. And you will never know when a book that you find somewhere, you place it behind you in your personal library. It might be decades later that you stumble upon it again and you read it for the first time, and all of a sudden it provides you with an insight that you wouldn't have had you had the book. But also, the library is of course something that you can pass on to future generations, to your offspring. Now, to the practices. Have a physical copy of the book. Try reading the book on its own without too much commentary on it. Don't look up something you don't understand on Wikipedia. Don't just, jump to the dictionary if you think you actually have to really look up one of these terms to make sense of it. Because in philosophy, you will notice that every philosopher uses terms, concepts in different ways. The best example is the word concept. For some philosophers, the word concept means the subsumption of certain representations that are all grouped together in one, but in Hegel, concept means something quite different. It's the living, breathing concept, to put it very simply, that does not subsume representations, but that rather provides the center by which the sensible and the intelligible come together. So it can be useful to have a philosophical dictionary to hand, but it is much better to think along with the so-called primary source, as we've come to call it, with the original text. And to think along with is what the word comment used to mean, commentare, to think along with. So this I would recommend you to do. Get the original book in your preferred language. Best thing to do is to read the text in your mother tongue, but also to be exposed to the original, even if you don't know, let's say, German or French. it is a good idea to look at the original text as well, and some of the words that are difficult, if not impossible, to translate. Now, when you read a text, it is also a good idea to get a journal and start journaling. So, for example, for, let's say, Plato, or Kant, or Hegel, or Heidegger, or Descartes, Thomas Hobbes, David Hume, whoever you are reading, get, for example, one of these here. Should be big enough in terms of its format that you can either, with lines or without, depending what suits you best, and you get a proper pen along with it. That if you get good paper, this paper will survive for decades, which means that you use good ink and you write on high quality paper. The ink won't dry out, and you can still read what you wrote 10, 20, 30 years later. Because the journals that you keep, and they need to be physical journals, not your tablet or your phone, those become part of your library as well. So I always keep these bigger ones here for, let's say, if I go to attend workshops or conferences with friends where we discuss certain matters, I keep these. But also when I read a book, I keep these bigger ones and take notes. I have, for example, notes on Aristotle's Metaphysics, on Plato's Politeia, on Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, etc., on Martin Heidegger's Being and Time and the contributions to philosophy. And I can always come back to these and see how I've tried to. So I take notes, I take very precise notes. Sometimes I just quote, I copy a sentence or an entire paragraph. I keep notes of where they are with the precise pagination. Or I summarize a paragraph and I comment on it. And this will stay with you. You will see your own thought develop over the years, and you will see where you perhaps departed from how you understood a text initially, maybe where you came back to it again a few years later. And of course, these serve as helpful reminders to get ourselves into a text again. And you can, and also you, by writing in hand, by hand, you will see the difference with writing as we're so used to on a computer is not just that you see your own handwriting and see how it changes over the years and decades, but also is that it cannot be as easily manipulated. Once you've written something, it's quite difficult, if not impossible, you cannot simply, as you know, copy, paste, or add something, or simply move a paragraph around. So you have to put effort into what you're noting down right from the beginning. It's a very different way of writing, so I highly recommend it just for that matter as well. But if you go to a conference or you listen to lectures online, for example, it might also be a good idea to keep these journals for that, or else you're just consuming content. So this is a good idea. So also, if you're doing, as you're here going through a philosophy course, it's really the best practice to get a copy of the original text that we're reading, but also then the journal alongside with it. And if you are doing this on your own time, then you can take notes while you're listening to the lectures, or while you're reading the book, or what comes to mind when you've stepped away from actually studying, because some things might come to you and you want to keep those. So you could put that in your journal as well if it's pertinent to the course. If you are in the seminars, then you should take notes in this journal during the seminars as well. While perhaps, and of course there are different formats, you get a smaller one, for example, as well. I would also highly recommend that you start using smaller notebooks that you always have with you. So you could get one of these and get a good pen. Keep the pen tucked in here, let's say like that. So you always have it to hand. And it's a good idea, I think, if you're not in the habit of doing this yet, to write down basically everything that comes to mind, however idiotic it may seem to you. Any thought, start writing down quotes with pagination again. Start making notes of your own thoughts and connections that you see. And over the years, you'll build a small library of your own journals, and you can go back through the years and see how your thought has developed and has unfolded, and best case, of course, also has led to certain unification within itself, so that genuinely what you are working towards is your life becoming a Gesamtkunstwerk, a complete work of art. So, with this, again, you're invited to join us here on this path as we go through a fundamental philosophical text together. And it is, I think, vitally important precisely because we are doing this in the virtual digital realm, that you also keep a good grounding and footing in the haptic sphere as well, something that you can touch and feel and smell, journals and books. So again, thank you very much for listening and for being here. Thank you.